So you got a story in your book about John Dean's safe. You started, what year did you go to work for the executive branch of government?
Well, I started off in August of 1970, the Uniform Division of the Secret Service. And through a couple different circumstances that created an opportunity for me, I worked in the Communications Center, also referred to as the Control Center for the Uniform Division of the Secret Service, who do all the vetting for all the people coming in to the White House, workers and various people. And through that opportunity, I became aware of the residence staff, the chief usher, the 90-some people that work in the residence. And an opportunity came available. One of the gentlemen who was an assistant to the chief usher was going to retire. And I was asked if I would be interested in the position. I was chosen, and that started my career in 1976 in the usher's office.
But prior to that, you did find cash. You get credit for you found cash in a safe in an office, and you didn't take it. Talk about Watergate era, White House vibes, energy, any part of that story that you want to tell?
Well, in particular, as I said, I was in the Uniform Division of the Secret Service and worked in the Control Center, and that's where all the alarms are for the complex, all the rooms that have security attached to them. And when somebody left a room late in the evening, and they didn't turn on the switch that said they were out and that the room was secure, that's when we got the information, and I was the one that was assigned to go check if somebody was still working late or what the circumstances were. And when I entered that room, it was obvious that everybody had gone, and I just did the security check because we didn't. Our responsibility was to check to see if there were any secure documents that were left out, and we were going to secure those if there was anything that was left out. And there wasn't any of that, but I saw a safe in that offices complex that was open, and I saw some cash.
Cash in there, yes.
I quickly closed the door and secured the safe and went back and made a report to that effect, and that was the end of that story.
Until one day you read in the newspaper about the committee to re-elect the president and the plumbers and all of why it was that people might want to have stacks of cash loose in their offices. The story of having, and I think for younger viewers, it's hard to overstate the significance of the Gorbachev-Reagan moment in the late 1980s. So 1987, it's the third summit. This is the one that has to work, right? Gorbachev and Reagan have had two. They've been to Reykjavik. They're close to a big deal to help really retire the threat of mutually assured destruction, the thermonuclear war threat that kids had been doing drills under their desks at school and that Americans had lived with for 50 years. And the Gorbachevs are coming to the White House. And this was, right, so Gorbachev is going to be dressed Western, and Mikhail Gorbachev wears nice suits. He doesn't dress like a Packard like his predecessors had. Talk about what goes into and what it meant to you to be there for this.
Well, the initial run-up to that event was contentious. Normally, when you have a visiting head of state come, an advance team comes the week before, and you walk through the circumstances where various things are going to take place and the various camera positions that are going to be there and so forth. But in this case, it was about a 2-week plus continuous run-up. The contentious nature of what had occurred previously and the possibility that was there were paramount. The tension was very high. The Secret Service was trying diligently to work with their counterparts in the KGB. And so it was a very contentious circumstance. I think we overcame that the United States government, by having the event here in Washington, was in charge. Obviously, there had been previous discussions that had allowed this intermediate nuclear weapons threat to be signed by the two men following their discussions in the Oval Office. And that was pretty much a closure. After the signing occurred in the East Room, they turned and walked down the long hallway on the red carpet to the East Room. I'm sorry, from the East Room to the State Dining Room. And in that room, we had taken out all the furniture. The only thing that was in the room were two podiums in front of the fireplace. The fireplace was lit for the first time in my years at the White House. It just wasn't very often that fireplace was lit. So it had a nice warm glow to it. The two men spoke to the world from those podiums to talk about world peace. I was one of very few people that was in the room, and I had a feeling in my heart, and that I could literally feel the thawing of the Cold War.
That's awesome. And
was one of the many times that I had a historic moment, but that one I think is the one that's premier in my mind for its effect on the world at that time.
And the Chief Usher at the White House, as I was reading, thinking about it, it's like a COO, right? It's a Chief Operations Officer for a pretty big and pretty vast organization and your details have to go all the way from matters of international protocol and diplomacy down to, making sure that the housekeeping is done. And you have to do all of that. I assume that you were always a well-organized person. I assume that you were always good. But what made you suitable for this job? What is it about this job and about you that was such a good match?
The only thing I can really say is that it took organization. My wife calls me Clipboard Gary.
I can hear her now.
I constantly am carrying a briefcase or a folder with me and have my calendar in there and making notes. I'm trying to be prepared and make sure that the White House is a home that the president and his family can be comfortable in, working with the president and the first lady. The White House has not its own way. It has the way of the president that's living there because it is their home for the period of time they're there. And the residence staff takes it as a personal responsibility to try and make sure that the residents of the House, the president, the first lady, their family, are comfortable in their home for that period of time.
And this includes the part about the remarkable Quick Change Act every 4 or 8 years when they have lunch or they have coffee at the White House and then ride down Pennsylvania Avenue. And by the time they come back after the inaugural parade, presto changeo, talk about the complexity of moving a family out and moving a family in the course of what really is just a few hours.
It ends up being about 4 or 5 hours after the inaugural act festivities and the swearing-in ceremony at the Capitol, and then the walk or drive down Pennsylvania Avenue and the parade, and then the new family comes in. As soon as the president-elect and the president leave the White House that morning going down to the Capitol, we have pre-positioned moving trucks, both for those things that are coming in and those things that are going out. There's been literally months of preparation leading up to that. Our responsibility, as we take it, is to have the House converted from the home of the existing president to the home of the incoming president. That when they walk in, there's no boxes on empty.
Yeah, and they see familiar things.
All their clothes are in the places that they wanted them. Their familiar foods are in the pantry. Snacks are available that they enjoy. So that's all taken a considerable amount of background work.
I bet you
and
need
that all
more than one
falls on the
clipboard.
Chief Usher.
Yeah, you probably needed more than one clipboard on those days. I can't let you go without asking you about Barbara Bush's hair. This story really tickled me, especially because Barbara Bush is when you think about Barbara Bush, who looks like she could have been married to a founding father and a woman of such poise and reserve, but just do me the favor, tell us the story about her hair.
Well, Mrs. Bush had one of the quickest wits of anybody I've ever known. And each morning she would go from the White House over to by the West Wing and go and have a morning swim in the swimming pool just south of the Oval Office. And when she'd go over in the morning, she'd have a bathing cap on her head, and the flaps over the ears would usually be up on top of her bathing cap, and her swimsuit was already on, and she had her robe on, and across she'd go. And when she came back, she'd come right back into the residence, get on the elevator, and go straight up to the second floor, past the first floor where the usher's office is. And one morning, she came back from the swimming pool in the elevator, who we were all expecting to go straight up, stopped at the first floor. And the First Lady got off the elevator and walked over to the usher's office. And as she walked in the door, I stood up, and she leaned against the door frame. And she said, and the ear flaps on her bathing cap were still down, which was rather odd. And she had an odd look on the face, and she said, "We have a problem." And I said, "Yes, ma'am, what's the problem?" She said, and she reached over and she pulled the ear flaps up, and her hair was green. And she said, "Gary, there's a problem at the swimming pool." And I said, I started to be defensive right away, and I said, "Mrs. Bush, we check the pool every morning for the pH and the chlorine level and everything." She says, "I don't believe that's the problem. We have a good friend who gave us some shampoo, and I used it for the first time last night.
Oh,
and
no.
I think the shampoo interacted with the chlorine." So she said, "I think you can take care of things by taking that case of shampoo and giving it to the engineers who take care of the dogs and bathe them from this point forward, and we won't, neither I or George will be using that shampoo."
So she was cool about it.
She was very cool about it, but she also said, "If any of you laugh, you're fired."
That's cool too. But that's cool too. Well, it's. I'll tell you what else is cool. That the proceeds from this book go to the White House Historical Society Association, White House Historical Association, which does so much good work in this regard. And you did so much good work for the country. This was real service, and this book is a real joy. So we thank you.
I thank you for the opportunity.
Heck yeah, heck yeah.